We have strong board members, and we have good teachers that love you. That's what I heard all through, regardless of who I talk about. They're talk too. So I'm an outsider looking in. I'm hoping to be an insider working on the inside, but to do all of this, I was an outsider looking in. So I'd like to preface that in no way is any information that I give in question 1 or question 2 meant to step on anyone's toes. Because when I suggest something, it might already be being done, and I don't know that. So I would need to learn all of that for myself. I think it's important that we, all of us together, in the district office and at the school level, are transparent and informative, and that nothing happens in secret, that we need to be informative and open to advertising what we have done and what we plan to do. For example, you go to the high school webpage as a parent. They have been providing, like right before graduation, they were providing information, they were providing that on their Facebook page, and sharing information with parents. Websites are important to parents, and Facebook, social media, just because we can be busy, working 12-hour days, having 2 jobs, just being so busy that we're not checking look back, we're not, hearing from the schools as much as we need to, so that social media is very important. So I think that's a way that we can be transparent. I would like to see for that a course catalog created at the high school that would explain every single pathway that's available, explain every single course. And I would want to use that platform, whether it's the webpage or the other social media outlets, to be able to be available to everything we have respective parents. So as I was an outsider looking in, I was thinking, I could be someone whose family is transferring to this area, and I have to make a decision on where it is to live, what schools our kids will go to. So I'm thinking that is such a very important thing. I didn't see that for some of the schools here, and I just think if we really need to market that and be as transparent as we could as we go through what I'll answer question 1 and question 2. So I think one of the things we need to do overall is what's important, decide what's important, and then commit to it. So we spend a lot of time writing those things in, and so I think, should go back to that possibly. We need to refine, we could, but I think it's a great place to start. I want to thank you for having me here, and I'm ready to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to read both of the questions together, and then I'll let you address both. Number 1, describe the system of checks and balances that you could create to ensure that teachers are implementing Tier 1 curriculum with fidelity, and students are learning and mastering the standards at a progressive rate. Also, based on data from state testing that is aligned to Tier 1 curriculum, how can we train teachers and school leaders to use the data to meet students' needs during instruction using the Tier 1 curriculum? Number 2, what would be your framework to improve school performance scores in Assumption Parish as it relates to ACT Index, LEAP Assessment Index, Growth Index, Early Literacy and Numeracy, and students with diverse needs? What specific resources would you provide to the low-performing schools to address their specific needs for improvement? What is your detailed plan of establishing equity to address the needs of each of our schools?
So standards define what the student should be learning, and the curriculum is the how. So standards are the what, curriculum is the how. We cannot expect teachers to implement curriculum without working with them to truly understand the how and the what. And in order for them to be able to do what they need to do to teach the kids at the level they need to be taught, that's critical. The saying, let's monitor gets done, I think it's very important. We're talking about Tier 1 curriculum, when we're talking about intervention, that we need to have systems in place that would allow for monitoring and support to happen, so that we ensure that everything that needs to be taught is taught. So I was a TAP principal for 4 years at Franklin Junior. With TAP, the principal, the other administration, the master teacher, and the mentor teachers all had to be nationally certified each year to use the TAP IEP rubric, which is what you get here. The process we learned that we followed faithfully every 6 weeks for all 4 years, I think could very well be. It might be difficult to implement on a 7-period day, but it could be done for sure. So this is what we learned. When we create the master schedule, we look for common planning time so that teachers who either teach the same kids by grade level or who teach the same content have the same time off. So here with schools, some schools being so small, there may not be multiple teachers teaching the same thing. I envision common planning time to be where they quite possibly could have the same planning time, say for 3rd grade across several schools, so that now that we have this technology, they can be meeting through Google Meet to talk about what they need to. So even though schools may be small, I think that could still happen. So the first thing the administration would need to do is to look for that time and then to protect it. So we don't have meetings about things that could be sent through email that time. We would be really truly working on instruction. We had to work with teachers first to have them help them get to know the rubric, because they can't be observed without knowing what it is that is expected of them. And so that was really important for us to do. The rubric itself, that NIT rubric, just simply outlines what good teaching looks like and sounds like. So that needs to be taught to them. When we're in a situation where we don't have 100% certified, where we have new teachers coming in that might not have any experience, it's just so very important that we share that information with them and give them examples and have them watch others so that they know what to do and how to do it. We had to look at state data together to decide areas of school-wide focus. So I remember years ago, state data was something that could just go in a filing cabinet. But if teachers in groups like this cannot get their hands on it and learn how to digest it and learn how to use it to be able to handle instruction, it's just a waste of time. So together, we decided school-wide focus. So there might have been a goal in English, reading, there might have been a goal in math. And then we would decide together which specific research strategies we would use. We would teach teachers how to model and think aloud based on those strategies. So we found that some kids need to hear the process of what a teacher was thinking as she's writing a paragraph, as she's answering a 2-step equation. Because we can teach it, but if they don't see that thought process, sometimes it's tough for them. And so it's real important that we take the time to teach teachers how to do that, model that for them, and then have them go out to do it. So then after we do that, the teachers would go out, we model to the students as they're taught, and then they would use those strategies. The leaders of the school, and in our case, it could be district leaders, like me, and our curriculum instructors, curriculum supervisors here in Assumption, could go into observe and provide feedback. And in some cases, we may need to model, especially for a new teacher or struggling teacher, they may need to see someone else do them. Okay? And then after that, we met on a weekly basis to examine student work and track data. So it was mandatory to bring student work with them based on that goal and whatever strategy you're using. And if they didn't, we have to have a conversation. And there were times when we had to ask people to leave the meeting because they were not ready. They needed to come in with the student work. They needed to be able to analyze it and track data based on that. And then if we needed to do that data, we would make adjustments to the strategy we needed. Then we would plan for the next week. So we would work on a strategy until we saw that kids had mastered it, and then we'd go on to another strategy based on those school-wide goals based on the state data. So I say that I think that that's something that could happen here, whether it's through Google Meet, where we all have instruction together during that common planning time, or in individual school. So I have a notebook that Mr. Lewis has, and I'm going to pass it around to look in. This was something that was critical to us, and I feel quite possibly something that we could do here. Every teacher received a composition notebook. They kept it on the desk. Yeah. And so when people would come in to observe and report with the class, they would write a note in. So this particular teacher had taught math for a couple of years. And so every single time I went in as the principal, every single time a master teacher or mentor teacher, someone from the district office went in, we would write notes about what we saw in support of the strategy that we had them teaching. We encouraged them to write back because we posed questions to them. And then we did all of that before that big formal observation came up to provide that support to them. So I was able to pull that one out that I still had in a box from when I was in Franklin Junior. But I just wanted to see the impact that possibly could have teachers writing back to us. So with your big 10 goals, I personally would make it 11 because there is no specific goal to address the fact that attention needs to be paid to our lower performing schools. So I think there should be a goal that specifically addresses that. And that was something that we had. You asked in the question about the system of checks and balances. So it might already be done, but I would take a detailed document and put it on a spreadsheet so that we could check off it today and finish it. There's a lot of detail in the document. And from when it was started, I'm sure some of the things have already been, like curriculum's been bought, things like that. So in terms of setting up groups, in terms of observations, in terms of providing feedback, those are the kinds of things with the checks and balances that I would be checking off as we went along, or I would be having the principal do that, just to make sure that every school in the district, for each goal, was doing what they need to do. While we need to revise, they may need to rewrite. That is a good place to start, especially if we're underway with COVID. I'm going to move on now to question 2. We all think together. But you asked about the framework to improve school performance scores here in Assumption Parish. I would address again the Big 10 goals. I would ensure that the resources that are in the district are pointed in that direction. So we are not spending money unnecessarily on something that isn't of importance or that isn't focused on the goal. So I would possibly have that common planning with teaming. We would work to understand that NIET rubric. I would like to see learning ones, whether it's peer observations where we have teachers going in to see other teachers, or it's principals or supervisors going together, or the district master teacher walking on with a district personnel or with principal, not really for evaluative purposes, but to walk around the field of the building to see what's going on, be able to talk to the kids, because if kids can tell you what it is that the lesson is supposed to be about and what it is they're learning, you know that we're on board, we're on target with what is being taught. So I would suggest that. In order to improve the school performance score, I think it's really important that administration is visible, whether that's district personnel or school personnel. You cannot go sit behind a desk, manage from a desk, and expect school performance to go along. So for me, that's critical. I'm already right now, I'll go in my office in the morning and put my purse and my keys down and my bag. And then I might not ever make it back into my office until it's time for the school out to go pick up that purse and to go sit down in my office. Just because I feel it's important that we're out, that we are visible. I think it's important that district staff is in the school. Where I am now, the district office is in the same parking lot. So they might be at our school a little bit more than they are at other schools, but I welcome that because I think the teachers need to see that support. The administration needs to see that support. The kids need to get to know them and feel comfortable being able to talk to them about instruction. Just really that's important. I read that we have, or I heard, that we have at least 2 or 3 trained content leaders or mentors, teachers in each school. So what that means is that they were selected by administration to go train at the state. So they are working on state standards. They're learning how to mentor other teachers. So I would like to really see that those people are fully utilized at the state. So they can be a terrific asset because those are people that have been proven to be effective in class, or an administrator would not have picked them, for sure. And utilize what they know from the state, because that is valuable information. It's exactly what the state expects to be done in the school. And then you have all of that built-in support where it needs to be. So I would definitely utilize them. I would also recruit and hire for the 2 current open positions that you have. We have a district master teacher position. There had been 2. We currently have 1. And there's an instructional supervisor position that is in the budget, federally funded, that I think could be critical. I know that the district personnel that we have here, in looking at what they're assigned to do and in talking to them, they have a lot on their plate, but we really need to be focusing, spending more time and let them have more available time to spend on instruction. I think it's really important to find somebody that's highly qualified, someone who knows curriculum instruction, and have them here to work as part of the district team, but to be in those schools, just like that district master teacher. Another thing that I would like to see, and I really feel like it could improve school performance, is I'd like to be able to find the funding for computers. It is 2020. We should be 1-to-1 in Assumption Parish. Kids learn. Kids have technology in their hands when you don't force them to put it up. Like it's everywhere, and they learn with that. But with that, finding funding to be truly 1-to-1, we need classroom technology, we need training, we need support, because you can't hand kids all this technology, or hand teachers an iPad and a laptop or a Chromebook or a medium board and say, here, go forth and teach. You have to be able to show them, model them, and be there for them as they're using that in their classrooms. Because it could be a shift for some that aren't used to that. I know that when I was, 1 year when I was at Patterson Junior, I had a teacher decide that teaching wouldn't be fun. It was like 14 days into the school year. So he told me that I can't do this anymore. So I said, so how much time do I have to find a new teacher? He said, today is my last day. So because it was 7th and 8th grade math, I could not just keep calling it a day-to-day sub to go into that class, because I knew that I would need to be the one writing the lesson plans anyway. That's where my background is. So I shut my office door and I did my principal work before school and on that teacher period. And then I taught all day long for 7 weeks. So I say that to say that because I've been out of the classroom for so long, when I was in the classroom, the fancy thing was I got colored markers with my whiteboard. It wasn't black and red and blue like it was a color set. So that was the big thing when I was there. So we had a medium board in the classroom. And I had expected my teachers to use it, but I didn't know how. So those kids, because they were familiar and had been using technology in those classrooms so much, they were my teacher. They helped me. But it was just critical that they had that piece. They knew that they could go to the board, they knew where to go, they knew on the boards, and then they could co-teach me, they could go up and work together. So it was a really powerful experience, but I think it's just really important that in the year 2020, we figure out how to do one-to-one. I think that's important. I think that we need to address topics such as completion of work versus mastery. And there's a big difference. If you think you don't master the art of riding a bike the first time you get on it. And so sometimes kids need extra practice with skills. So I'm teaching 2-step equations, and then I can have the kids practice and I can give a test. But it might be enough time, enough practice, and I might not have said it in enough ways or had a kid say it in a different way for that student to master that skill. So when we think about grades and we think about moving to school performance score, we can't be quick to put a grade in a grade book because we finished a test. We need to work on, after that, working with kids to work to mastery. So then something else that we would probably need to talk about is teaching versus acting. There's a difference between lecturing to the room and teaching and making eye contact with kids and ensuring that they're understanding. If they're not asking questions, there's a big difference in that. That's something that I would want to have conversation about with the teacher for sure, and then look at that. One of the things that we probably need to address is how to collect and utilize data to make decisions. And that's not just the state testing data that tells us when our school performance score is that better number, but it's the day-to-day, week-to-week data and what teachers and schools can be doing with that data. Another thing is to discuss and work on the culture. And the culture of school and the culture of the classroom and the culture of a district can either support or prevent reform efforts to sustainability. So if the culture is bad, the reform effort growth is not happening. If the culture is good, from the classroom to the school, to the district, all that can happen.
You asked about supporting struggling learners. When you accept, when you adopt Tier 1 curriculum, the state has guidance for what you do with struggling students. I would definitely use that information. It's out there, it's available for use. I also think that in order to improve the school performance score, that school level, district level administration should model whatever it takes to happen. So when I was at Franklin Junior, we were at the lowest possible, and we had kids that were in 8th grade who could not know the They could not do it. So that meant that they were not going to be ready for Algebra 1 in 9th grade. That's a gatekeeper course. The multiplying and dividing was stopping them from being able to solve the equation. Because that was the thing they could tell you how to do to solve it, but they couldn't do the things that, was stopping them. So modeling whatever it takes mentality would be me or a principal standing at the door. And as the kids come on, have the flashcards. And every kid, as they go through the line, has to answer one. We did that for months and months, and it seemed to help. But that would be whatever it takes. Okay, so for the ACT index, training is important. I know that I think you have worked with Renee Hartley and for ACT products and support. I would like to see the ACT content and the work content in every single high school class, not just in ACT prep class, not just in the finance math class where the work needs to be made, but having time in a 7 period a day, class, each teacher to be assigned a content area and address at least one question a day, address at least one strategy per day on how to take that test and master it. Instead of being in isolation in these small pockets, in order to meet the goals that are set for kids to be ready for college, to be ready to go in the workforce, those doors need to be as high as possible for scholarship opportunities, for entrance even to a technical college or to Nicholls State University. That's important. But the work keys credential indicates to businesses that those kids are ready in those areas to be able to be productive in their workforce with their own training. So those are very important. And I think if they're embedded everywhere, that we would be better off. Also, one of the things that we've done at the last 2 schools I was at, but we would have Saturdays. So at Fletcher High, we would have ACT Saturdays, where the kids, they didn't have to come. but we would send home flyers, we would call parents, we would put it on Facebook. So we would have tons of kids come. Our last one that we had, it was a couple of Saturdays back to back before the big state test. We had probably 89 or 90 kids coming. And so we had kids that were taking the test early so that they could reach a score to get into a dual enrollment class. We had kids taking the test because they knew they needed it to get into LSU. We had kids there to hear all of those strategies and hints. So what we did with that is I talked to businesses, and we were able to feed the kids, so they had snacks throughout the day. They had lunch. We had door prizes. It wasn't anything that cost the school a penny. I didn't pay teachers. They came and volunteered. And that can happen. I didn't give them a dime, they didn't. They just wanted to see if kids were interested, that they would come and offer strategies and hints and tips right before that state test so that they would be successful. So thinking that would be definitely another way, and I would be more than willing to be a part of that, here for sure. For the LEAP assessment index, I think cold reads are very important. That's where kids take information that they have never read before, and they read it, they annotate, and then they answer questions about it. Working just on that will help in subjects like English, science, and social studies, because the content that you can use for those cold reads doesn't just have to be a reading passage. It can be related to science. It can be related to social studies. And that was one of the things that we did and worked hard on at Franklin Junior, was having them do those cold reads. We progress monitored, and we taught following the standards. For the growth index, for student progress, we need to know the data. We need to know what they've been. They need to know where they're going. If they don't meet the goal for the for the assessment index, they very well can reach a higher level and end up in that other for the progress index. And when that happens, that really helps the school performance score. For early literacy and numeracy, you already have adopted Tier 1 curriculum for those things. Early catches for intervention in early literacy and numeracy are very important. If we catch early, if we intervene early, the chances of them being strong readers later helps. And so that's what I would suggest doing, is just progress monitor, catch the kids early, and watch for intervention. Students with diverse needs. For students with disabilities, we need to identify their needs. We need to ensure that teachers understand accommodations and modifications. We can hand teachers a plan, but they may not know the definition of extended time. They may not know how to provide some of the accommodations. So instruction on that and support on that is very important. So we would work with teachers to provide interventions with the Tier 1 curriculum first. And then with COVID, Bulletin 741 states that students with disabilities must continue to receive their services. So here, we're about to be home for some days and not be at school 5 days a week. So for our students with diverse needs, it's really important that special education continues even when they're at home. So we have to figure that out. So whether that's the teachers calling home to work with the kid while they're on the phone, working on the work, or having kids come in, just those kids coming in for a little bit extra time, whatever it takes. The Bulletin 741 is not released from any of that. For mental health, for social emotional behavior, it's real important that we have staff training for that. I know that I've heard several times that you have a focus on the social emotional behavior, and we need to be able to provide the teachers with the training and the support. We need to be able to have places that we can refer kids to. It's so hard in some of the smaller communities to have agencies that we can refer kids to for mental health, for counseling, for support. It's tough to find them, but when we do, we need to be consistent in how we identify those kids and how to provide that support for parents. Specific resources for low-performing schools. One of the resources that we have is some time. It takes time to identify, to diagnose exactly what's going on. With my dissertation, I developed a survey that could be used in schools or in school systems with teachers to see how they're feeling and how things are really going in terms of the reform that they're going through. So in working with students with in low-performing schools, being able to provide the support to teachers that we need to provide, we need to be able to gauge them along the way in some kind of way to figure out where they are with their training, how they are in using the information, and all of that. We really, I think in those schools is we need to hyper-focus, truly focus on math and on reading. You can do just that with science and social studies built in. Your passages can be science and social studies related and really focus in on getting kids to read on level. If they're not reading on level, start where they were, where they are, and work with them and work with them and work with them until they move to the next level. So if you look at the Big Ten document, the detailed one, there are resources there. We just might have to provide a different skill set for the teachers or for the kids. And then ensure through adult accountability that the Tier 1 curriculum is being taught. You ask about establishing equity to address the needs of each of the schools. Equality has to do with giving everyone the same exact resources. So that means that if we have adopted Eureka Math, we are providing that for every single student. That's equality. Equity is distributing resources based on the needs of the recipients. So we need to be able to disaggregate all of the data, the testing data, the discipline data by race, gender, socioeconomic status, disability, English proficiency, and assess the causes of the inequity that we're seeing. We need to identify factors that contribute to the disproportionate rates of student success, the lack of diversity in all aspects of the district, and determine if we have any unsafe environments. We need to research and implement best practices, and we need to have a belief, especially in an equity situation, that every student is capable of learning, every student. So suppose you're a one-to-one district and we have all these computers. We have given every single student a computer to use for the entire year. We provide laptops and we mandate, or Chromebooks, and we mandate work. We show quality by handing one out to every single student. We're not addressing equity by doing that, because some students may not have internet at home. Their parents may be doing everything they can to pay all the bills that they can, and internet is just not an option for them. So to show equity, we need to do what we can, find the funds that we can, if we expect for students to learn in that manner, to find the hot spot that and help find funds to fund it so that those kids can be learning in the same way as those that have the internet. So we
No, she needs a timer.
It's the timer.
Oh, that's my, okay, all right. Okay,
So you had 15 minutes for each question, so she set the timer for.
for 30, okay. I was horrified thinking that was my phone.
Okay,
So now she had a 10-minute.
you have 10-minute closing.
Thank you so much.
Oh, he had follow-up questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, as a young man growing up, I can recall several things or situations that happened in my life that truly identified or defined my character and integrity as an individual I aspired to be growing up. My question, have you ever had an incident, a situation, or anything in particular that you can identify as a defining moment in your life? And if so, can you share it with the board?
Not this April, but the April before. I got a phone call that my baby brother was dead. He had passed away. And he lived in Minneapolis. And we weren't in contact a whole lot. He was so very different from me. I am one that has my doctorate. I'm in education. I'm very linear in my thinking. He was very creative. He worked in music and in art. And we didn't have a huge connection. When he passed away, I went with my parents in Minneapolis. We needed to pack up his things and we needed to go get him. And his friends, who loved him so much in the art community and in the music community, had a big celebration of his life while we were there. So they rented out an art gallery. They rented and they all brought artwork that he had sold or given to people, and they talked about how he had impacted that community. So that was very sad for me, and I miss my brother tremendously. Like it's, it's taking a limb away from me. What it did for me in education is it solidified, I think, with the fact that not everyone has to have a college degree. Not everyone has to go to a technical college. That it's more important sometimes to fight for, pursue what you love, because you still can make a difference without the other stuff. So he made a huge impact in South Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And I had no idea because I had not had lots of conversation with him about that. We talk about my parents, we talk about, life with my kids and all of that. The impact for me, seeing his friends, his hip hop friends, rap friends, seeing the work that he's done, just floored me, and it solidified the fact that I need to be pushing for every kid to do exactly what it is that they feel called to do, and that we as educators need to find a way to let them have that outlet to help support them as they get there.
Thank you for sharing that moment with us. Thank you very much.
Does
I have
anyone
one-
else
yeah,
have
I have
any
one
follow-up?
I have one question. You said that 80 or 90 kids went to that ACT?
Yes.
Do you remember the number of kids that increased their scores? Now about with the average of the increase of the scores?
No, I could get that information for you. We needed them there. Some of them already had 7.
Okay.
And for 26, we're striving for 27 because that was the very top. Some of them had a 12 and would make it, with a higher score. So the vast majority of them that would stay, that would invest in that, we would give little practice tests throughout the day. They ended up increasing the score. One of the projects that you have here for ACT, if used with fidelity, should work. One of the ACT products that this district has purchased for use in those ACT classes. I've seen it work in the last 2 years with a targeted group that really needed that instruction.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Washington?
Mr. Dallas, what are some of the effective leadership characteristics that you possess that will help you grow and become an effective leader in Assumption Parish School that will move our district forward?
That's a good question. I am dedicated. I am deliberate in every single one of my actions. I am not afraid to admit that I make a mistake, but I take that mistake and fix it. I'm passionate about education. I'm driven. I'm willing and eager to do the work. I will never, ever ask someone in my building, or in this case, in a district, to do something that I either have not done or that I will not do.
Thank you, that's good.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes, Dr. Molly, the question I have, you said that when you had the notebook deal in the classroom, you use those notes in the low performing schools also, like school-wide deal?
Yes.
Yes, the school where I started using those was the lowest of OD was about to be taken over by the state. And we knew that we needed to be providing constant feedback to the teachers on what it was happening in the classroom. So that notebook idea is something that holds them accountable, but holds us accountable. I knew that I needed to get into a certain number of classes per day. I needed to listen and be present in class, like mentally, to be able to make sure that my strategies, the school strategies were being put in effect. And if not, I needed to be able to ask questions and provide additional.
Yes,
So yes.
thank you.
Dr. Sedalis, in your interview just now, you said that you expected to possibly using federal funds to maybe hire some additional people. Is there a timetable? And you also mentioned in low performing schools that it's going to take some time to evaluate, and that is critical before making major decisions. Do you have any timetables in terms of how soon you expect to use federal dollars if they're available? How soon would you be doing that? And what is the timetable in evaluating and providing resources and evaluating the resources that we have and have not given or have not been made aware of to the local and all schools, really?
Correct.
So could you elaborate on that?
Yes, okay. So the positions I talked about are already in the budget. They are positions that are in the assumption parents budget that have been unfilled. I believe one might have been retirement, I don't know, and then the other one is where the district master teacher went to do something else. So those are already budgeted for. I would want that to happen quickly, just because we need to get the ball rolling. So I would like to be able to have discussion with y'all, but also have discussion with district personnel on what it is that we would need that district supervisor, instructional supervisor to do. I don't necessarily need someone that's a turnaround specialist just to focus on those schools. I think we need somebody that would be district-wide to work with that. When I interviewed last week, I handed you a draft of my entry plan and what I wanted to do maybe in the first few months. So COVID, those things are filtered just because we don't know what school is going to look like and feel like when the kids and teachers come back to parents in just a few days. But with that being said, I would think that we would have time within this fall semester to be able to watch, listen, to be able to observe, to evaluate how the resources are being used, the ones that have currently been purchased, and to make some decisions with the plan on specifics on what we do.
Thank you.
Ms. Orso?
No, excuse me, we are a rural town with limited activities for our students. I am grateful for our successful athletic programs to be able to offer for our students to be involved in the education makes them a better student. What other programs besides sports can you envision introducing to our high school students who are sports minded to get them involved?
I don't know if we have science club, but I'm married a science educator. We talk about science all the time. Really think that clubs that help build kids academically, but also their interest in the community and their life is very important. So things that I noticed that we don't have in our elective high school is like a robotics class. I would like to see us to be able to offer clubs that would get kids.
And that.
One of the things that
I wanted to talk about.
and I really would take time, I guess, do it in my closer, but, I would really like to bring what's the Hope Squad here. Lecture High School is the first school in the state of Louisiana. We lost a student year before last to suicide. And, it crushed me before. I've lost weight kids, to suicide, and 2 nights ago. A senior who was shot in his yard. This Hope Squad, is a peer-to-peer suicide prevention where the kids are selected, nominated by their peers, to become trained how to identify at-risk kids in terms of their emotional, how they feel emotional. So with that, we were able to put it in place with the parents of the student that we lost, and some of our students we felt very strong about it. But so we had retreat where we trained them, and then they went out to school and just kept an eye on them. So with that, with COVID, it developed more into what can we do for the community? How can we be reaching out to check on the other kids in the school even though we're not seeing them? So they were doing things in the evening and on the weekends that it wasn't a club, it isn't a club, but it was having an impact on our community, a positive impact, having an impact on our kids. They were able to text or call or message if they had a kid that they felt was at risk to address. So it just really blossomed into something else that is a strong impact on our community. I would definitely.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Mr. Meyer?
Yeah. Dr. Stans, you talked about not needing a degree to be successful. What kind of programs would you like to see implemented to see some of these kids that will be able to get into some things like the industry and operations, welding, pipe fitting,
Yes.
E&I, things like that? How would you reach out and figure out how we can develop better programs for that?
I think it's real important to
Figure it out.
one of the things that's happening now with the state is we've moved from Jumpstart, which is you can graduate on a pathway in Jumpstart, where you can go out and be ready to work in the industry, or you can go to technical college and continue like your welding and things like that. We're moving to 2.0 at the state level. We're not, all of us, don't have a good grasp of it because there's not been, it's just been a change for us right now this semester. That rolled out in the spring. I think it's going to depend on funding that we can find, and it's going to depend on local industry and maybe areas around. It's going to depend on maybe a relationship with lectures or other areas that are close. But I feel strong that we should be preparing kids to either walk out of doors to go be successful to make a living, or they need to do college. So it may take me just a little bit to figure that out. I would like to see, when I talked about high school having a course catalog where that would be posted on their website, that would give me a good description of every course, of every pathway, and what's already being offered. So that's something that I would work with Ms. Thibodeau on. I think that's very important. But I think being able to find that out would help me to answer your question a little bit more. I don't know all that we hear what credentialing happens or can happen for students.
I have when my granddaughter graduated from Berwick High School, she had 12 credits, college credits already.
Yes.
What is your plans to get that into our high school?
Okay, so my son, my oldest daughter, Morgan City High, they at that point did not have an opportunity for kids to earn mini dual enrollment credits. Where I am now in St. James Parish, my daughter just graduated the year before last, 27 dual enrollment hours. Some kids graduated 30, 36, 40, had a couple of kids graduated 60. So it's really being able to have strong communication with your technical colleges, maybe partnering with schools, maybe even going to LSU, and Fletcher with. We would need either a qualified teacher here in the district, so we have a master's degree in that content hour plus the additional hours required to meet that qualification, or we would be able to somehow sign an MOU, quite possibly with one of the universities for that to happen. I would need some time to think about how it would happen on 7-period day, because we're blocked, and I've been in the block mode for several years. So with block, they have 4 classes in fall and 4 in spring, so they had time to fit that in. There were also 90-minute classes, which are more along the lines of college classes. But that's something, I think, if we can help parents not have to pay for as much college, that's awesome. Like for us, coming in and needed only 3 more hours to be considered a sophomore. That's huge, huge for a family. It really is. And in small communities like this, that's really something that we can do. I know we have, if Assumption High is an A school, and we do well with some of the indexes that we're graded on, we have kids that are capable of doing that. So I just need to figure it out. But we work with RPC City. We have a good relationship with schools, and we have kids that are qualified. And that's another reason to have those ACT Saturdays, because kids have to qualify in order to take the classes. They have to get a certain score to be able to get in. And if we work with them closely, even starting in 9th grade, they can begin taking the test to set them up, like maybe have an algebra taken, their Englishes, some of their humanities. But I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm passionate about that. As a parent, it helped me out. It did. And it gave my daughter the confidence knowing that she wasn't having to go take as many classes, so like she was ready to go into hit her content that she made.
But we need something to attract our kids to come to something high.
Yes.
All the students end up having something high.
Yes.
And we really need to spruce the school up to where we can attract, because we have a lot of kids that when they finish 8th grade, go to another school. So I'm looking to see that this school becomes a model school.
Right. And so we want to do that. Would be one of the things that can help draw them in, and the opportunities we have with that. But also identify those pathways that you talked about in terms of what credentialing could give them to be able to walk out into the workforce. Those things are attractive as well. You know, I have kids like who walked out of our schools and were offered jobs. We had 3 of them this past year. Walk out of, not this past year before, graduated, had jobs, $60,000 working in local industry with full benefits. 2 of them were too young to take the job. They had to be 18, and so they were providing summer jobs until they were get there. That's like life changing. That's, you know, and I think if we could work together, plan, and to figure that out, that makes high school very attractive, especially with the connections and the support you would have from the local industry, technical college, or university.
Thank you.
All right. I can ask one more question. One more question. I'm a math educator like you know, numbers. And I taught at Morgan City High in junior high for 7 years. Now, evidently, when you passed that book around, that notebook, it was unique. And I gathered it was effective, right? Yes. So I want to know that school you said was a D school. Yes. And evidently that was effective using that notebook. So what did that grade?
So when I got there, we were the lowest D possible, could be taken over by the state. When I left, we were high C.
Okay.
So when I got there, we were diagnosing why the kids were struggling. We had many that could not read, or that might be reading on a 2nd or 3rd grade level, and they're in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We had kids that did not know their basic math skills, so we really had to stop and work on that. We had to intervene in math just because they were not going to be ready for Algebra 1. They were not going to be ready for high school. And so it took the time I was there 4 years, but research also shows that, that growth in increments means sustainability.
Right.
Like if you have a school that goes from an F to an A or D to an A just like that, you need to question that.
Right.
And you need to go dig because that is not sustainable and it may not be on the up and up. You know? So at that school, my first year, when kids would get in trouble, I would always have to come in and write a statement. That gave them time to cool down and to kind of collect their thoughts before they would start hollering at me or the other person. So they would write. We had a big incident happen first year, and I had to write. So I was showing my superintendent at the time their writing and having to decipher for him what the kids were saying because I heard so I knew what they were saying and I witnessed what it was. Well, at the end of the next year, another big, and they had to write. And I'm showing the superintendent, and the one thing he stopped and he said is, those kids are writing that. And I've never looked at it in a discipline situation, but for him to be able to read the sentences to understand what they were saying, something was working, and it was showing in other areas besides just the past, you know.
All right, if there are no further questions, you have 15 minutes for closing.
10.
Okay, 10. Okay, you have 15 minutes.
15.
One of the things I want to talk to you about is with discipline. In talking to someone in this district, she asked the comment that there may be people that are scared of the kids. You cannot be scared of the kids in high school. You can't be because they smell that. And if we punish and we give consequences and then give another consequence for the same act, we're never going to see the kids do anything else. So one of the things that we received training on, we're in a DSEG order and parish, we've been in that for years and years, like before I was born, they were in it. And so we recently had training on what's called restorative practices, which is shifting what we do. I have a dean of students who really took this and blossomed with it in that instead of having to come in, they took the class story, the issue of consequence. He would sit down, he would talk to the kid, he would prepare that kid, talk to the other kid, and then they would sit together to repair the situation. So it wasn't always a consequence. I'm not always about to go out of school suspension or whatever. It was that what they used to do. So we've also recently done that with teachers. You know, sometimes kids can get on teachers' nerves. The last, you know, and so sometimes teachers write in purple. It's probably rightfully so. And that's a time for the kid to be out of the class. Everybody calm down. So us going from you need to punish that kid, he needs a consequence, why does he not have a bigger consequence than what he had? To, I need for you to sit down with us, we need to repair the relationship with you because guess what, he's coming back tomorrow, you know? So I just wanted to talk to you about that. And there's a lot of research on it. I would be more than happy to come and train or have one of my, especially my deep students come and talk about it from Fletcher High School, just because I think that that could make a big difference here as well. Okay, so in closing, rigor, relevance, and relationship are three things that are big to me. I don't want for a teacher just to teach at the lowest level possible. I would expect for teachers to go in and be able to teach, not to give harder work, not to give more work or bigger projects, but to actually go in and teach the higher level that kids can get there and their bodies more for them to get there. For rigor, I would really like to be able to sit down and figure out some more elective classes for the middle school and high school. At the middle school level, they pick credit for their school performance award for DCAI, which really basically what that is they have to have a certain number of courses passed, you know, before they go on. And so I know that for hear that some kids take, in middle school, they take Spanish through Edgenuity. That's hard to take an online Spanish course. So middle school kids would do that. So I would like to be able to look for some rigorous electives that would help with that, to receive those high school credit points, but also the electives offered at in high school that are rigorous, more involved. I know that there are some courses at Assumption High that can be taken as a freshman, a sophomore, and senior. You can have some more progression with that, and it's of course going to depend on staffing. And you can't bring tons of other people, but you can hone in on what makes each teacher special and their areas of interest. You have some of the electives that I think would be more rigorous in what we're doing. I want to talk about relevance. If kids do not see why something relevant, they don't care. You think about science. I remember being taught classroom in a lecture style format. We sat in rows. We all had a paragraph to read. We took notes, questions at the end of the section. That was not relevant. I was bored. A science class. You can make all kinds of with kids. You know, if you're a physics, my husband was a physics teacher for a long time. And, you know, he would have skateboards. He would have all kinds of things to teach the kids to understand the concept. It became more real and more relevant to them. So, just really think that's sort of. My brother in school was bored. And I think that was his creative side. And he didn't find the English class to be relevant. So he didn't make that relationship. To me, you cannot be in education today without relationship. You can't be a teacher. You can't be a parent. You can't be a board member. You can't be a bus driver. Not be a principal. You can't be a superintendent without developing relationships. In order for us to do our job, we need to get to know the kid, to know what to know when they walk in the door that something happened before they got to school that is going to make them have a bad day. So when I went to junior, all of the kids that had failed the LEAP test in 8th grade were back on my campus. So I had 17-year-olds that were mad. They were mad. They were going to be 8th grade, maybe for the third time. They saw no relevance to anything they were doing, and they were just basically in a holding spot. But I understand it was important that they have that 8th grade leap before they moved over. I had a girl in my office, she was mad, and 17 years old. We had a candid conversation. I said, "What do you want to do when you graduate?" She was very, very quiet. I thought she didn't. And then she said, "No one has ever asked me that question." So 17 years old, no one had ever asked her what it was that she wanted to do with her life. As an African American young woman, nobody ever taken time. The relationship on our end, you know, regardless of what role you play in education, they are very important. We should have known that way before 17 in English, because that would have helped us guide our education. So those relationships are very important. I had wanted to talk about Hope Squad now, but I talked about it with you. If you want to see anything about our Hope Squad, you can go to our Lecture High School Hope Squad Facebook page and take a look, scroll through there so you can see the different things that they've done. You can see exactly what a Hope Squad is. Also, you can go to just Google Hope Squad. It's out of Utah, state of Utah, without Greg Clinton. Some other things that I would like to be able to do here that didn't probably fit in the other question. I would like for us to be able to celebrate quality. I read through, I told y'all last week, I read through like your board minutes, a lot of them. And one of the things that we did, and I really enjoyed as a principal, is that the board and parish assign principals every month to identify a teacher and a student, and I would like to go as far as to support person. So they would be the teacher of the month for the board, the the student of the month and support person of the month. And it doesn't have to really cost anything. It's just the principal coming into the board meeting to say, these are awesome people. This kid does this. This teacher has done this. This support person does this. And that's a way to celebrate some of the goodness we see in the schools that may get overlooked and probably not acknowledged as much as they need to be. But I would like to do that. I would like to see more community. Some of the schools are highlighted quite a lot in the newspapers, and I think that's important. And then also, there's a Facebook group called Citizens for a Better
Assumption
Parish.
That's a good site. Go read and get lots of information. But one of the things I've learned is that there are people in these communities, for all of our schools, that are willing to come in and help. If we have limited resources, if we don't have enough paraprofessionals, we have students that are at risk and need assistance, we have people that we can reach out to. So I would really like to do that, and they can help us, and we've got additional resources, but then we can celebrate the gains that we make based on them volunteering to help us. So things I'm good at. So this goes along with questions. I'm perceptive, and I notice a lot. I'm quiet sometimes, but I notice. I can quickly determine who is sincere and in the business of education for the right reason. I can smell laziness and insincerity, and I fight for what's right. So Jim Collins and Richard Gray talked about needing to have the right people sitting in the right spot on the bus. I think it's possible for us to do all of that together. So since my timer went off, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate the fact that you've given me an opportunity with questions to plan to come and talk to you again, and I look forward to hearing from you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stadalis. Was there anything else before? We're good? We're good. Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Hammond? Yeah, it's in here, if any.
Time to make that motion to go into executive session.
Okay, if we need to, or,
Before we hear the other
I
candidate?
thought we'd do it after we have
Yeah,
voted.
you go in now, candidate, and then you come back out here for the second one, back in the second candidate. So if you want these questions, you ask any questions, discuss last week.
okay,
Anybody got a question?
a motion? Do we,
We don't need to go into for more questioning, and that's what.
right, any other questions that,
I'll make a motion.
motion by Mr. Beck,
Okay.
second by Mr. Lewis, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Meg.
Let it be recorded that Mr. Myers voted no.
Board members, and as a executive session will be held where it was last time.
Are the lights on?
The lights are, or should be, we put them on before we began, hopefully.
Okay.
We put in there 15 minutes, are we limiting them to 15 minutes? To be respectful of the next candidate's time, or?
Everybody don't have questions, probably.
Okay.
I'm saying everybody don't have questions, probably. It may not last 20
All right, just.
So move.
Moved by, Mr. Bass, second. Moved by Mr. Dag, second by Mr. Washington, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Gonna bring out the next, candidate. Mr. Bartholomew.
Nick is gonna be one of the things.
Tomorrow, please.
Fine, sir. How you doing?
How you doing, Dick?
Good evening, Madam President.
Thank you. Good evening.
Save the last for the best.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Bartholomew. Welcome back to Assumption Parish. You will have a 10-minute opening, and then we'll read off the 2 questions, and you'll have 15 minutes for each response. Is that right? Okay. And then a 10-minute closing.
Good evening, Madam President. How you doing this evening? Board members. I would also like to thank everyone online that are participating, as well as everyone in the audience. Everyone should have screen up at this time. Good. Okay. I would like to get started by just saying I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be in the final round. It's truly a blessing, as well as very, very appreciative of being here. So to get started, I've created a PowerPoint presentation for you tonight. I will talk through this PowerPoint, and I will also provide answers to all the questions that you provide. So let's get started. A systemic change for improving our school. My first 2 slides will talk about open lines of communication, school-based health center, and my community of System 5 for improving schools and school districts. I would like to, let me say this, everything that I say tonight, obviously will work, I will work with the administration already on staff. I want to make sure that I'm clear on that because I think we have a phenomenal administrative staff here at Assumption Parish. So the teacher advisor, open lines of communication and make sure that we're very, very transparent. Teacher advisory is designed to open lines of communication between teachers and the superintendent. Each campus will be granted a representative. Each representative is responsible for collecting any questions, concerns, or suggestions the faculty may have. That particular representative will submit all those questions, concerns, and comments to the chair, and then that chairperson will give those to me, and then I will review those along with my office staff. We will have an advisory committee meeting. We will answer any questions, address any concerns, and suggestions. We will also have a principal advisory team. Principals will have the same opportunity, designed for open lines of communication between the principals and the superintendent. Each principal will submit any questions, concerns, or suggestions to the selected chairperson. The chairperson then will submit those responses to my office, and we will discuss those with administrative staff, and we will answer it back to principal. Both committees try to meet 8 times per year, depending on time of year. We definitely want to make sure this is a continuous cycle. Also, I would like to send out a principal's memo to inform the principals of everything that happened in the district and any upcoming events. We want to make sure that we communicate who, what, when, where. We also want to communicate any updates from different departments. That way, our principals have one location for all communications. They don't have to just email from various departments. It's all in this one document. Also, to make sure that continuity between the staff, we have instructional staff. Obviously, I'm coming from a district that has captured kids' hearts. We want to make sure that we provide every opportunity to engage in that particular strategy. We also reiterate because the work that we're doing is centered around our vision and our district goals. We have a management staff, instructional staff, and then our leaders. These meetings are held weekly. School-based health centers. As you are aware, we have COVID-19 in all of our communities. With school-based health centers, we can provide service to the families that are in need. These school-based health centers will provide not only health services, but also behavior services. School-based health centers that provide health care on campus, on site. So our parents and our students do not have to leave the community. More importantly, our students do not have to, they can actually stay at school. They do not miss school. And that's extremely important because if we're talking about raising scores and improving our overall performance of the district, we need kids in class. And also for our parents, we want them to stay at work. We want them to have an opportunity to do their job as well. These centers will allow students, obviously, again, to receive medical care that they need. What's also important for me here is also on the behavior side. We want to make sure that they provide opportunities for our kids socially, emotionally, as well as health. Community of systems. This is my 5-phase approach for improving schools. Phase 1, the data grid. Phase 2, the root cause analysis. Phase 3, sustainable solutions. Phase 4, enact solutions. Phase 5, system review. Now, I want to point out, oftentimes when we do a day-to-day, we want to go directly into systems and not do a root cause analysis, which is the most important component or phase in this particular system. Now, I want to give you an example. For example, right now, our ACT average in our district is 18.3. Our goal is to be a 19.8. The state average is 19.3. Initially, we looked at, oh, 18.3. Let's offer ACT prep. Let's offer Saturday school. Let's offer online ACT remediation. But we've never really looked at the 18.3 and figure out why 18.3 is 18.3. So in my root cause analysis, we would address the 18.3 and look at why it's an 18.3. So my question to my staff would be, why is our ACT average at 18.3? Then we will look at the subscore. Now, that is 18.3 is the actual number. The Sub-scores I had to put in because I couldn't find them on the website. So, reading is a 16, math is a 21, English is a 23, science is a 20. So by asking the question why, we've just identified, maybe some people may call it a problem, or some people may call it a challenge or an issue. Looking at our scores, we know math is a 21, is above an 18.3. English is a 23, we know that's above an 18.3. Science is a 20. So now we're looking at reading. So my question again is say why our kids reading as a subscore, reading and producing a subscore of 16. Then we dig deeper into reading and identify what are the components of reading. So let's say reading comprehension stands out. So my question again would be why? Why reading comprehension is a problem? So we're drilling all the way down to the problem. Then we go into what makes up reading comprehension. Fine, vocabulary, phonemic awareness, fluency, coding, all of those skills our kids need in order to read. But if we initially look at the 18.3, we're going to miss the mark. Well, I should say miss the mark. We've gone from 18.3 here to reading, much closer, to reading comprehension, much closer, to now we have vocabulary, which will have us zero in on the target and make sure that we provide the attention needed for this specific problem. This is where the problem is. So we can't fix this overnight because we know students in elementary grades, this is where they learn how to do. Day-to-day, just to give some more information as it relates to the background of day-to-days are concerned, we're looking at every single piece of data that we possibly can related to schools whenever we're doing a day-to-day. Now, we can use this process, whether we're looking at ACT for one individual campus or ACT for the entire school district. And these are some examples: student performance scores, intervention data, IEP, IEP, different types of programs, student performance scores. We have UIN schools in our district. So sub-scores are extremely important right now. The state is giving a grade on how we're performing with our sub-scores. So it's extremely important that we identify the subgroups and address those elements. Attendance, behaviors for suspensions are concerned. Teacher certification, our teacher BAM score. Are we providing our teachers with the right resources they need in order to score high BAM scores? Are our teachers high BAM scores in the areas in which we need them? Teacher attendance, school-wide data, school schedules, course markers, parent surveys, faculty surveys, student surveys. We want to hear from everyone. And then also our programs. Our programs effective. What about before school, after school, during school, students? What about the curriculum? Tier 1 supplemental. What about progress monitoring? Teacher development, training, coaching cycles. We want to look at every piece of data. The root cause analysis phase is always asking why. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? All the way to reach the root cause. Drill down to the problem. And sustainable solutions is basically improvement strategies, and then we have your impact, and then you follow up with your system.
All right, that was your 10-minute opening. I'll read off the 2 questions that we sent. Number 1, describe the system of checks and balances that you would create to ensure that teachers are implementing Tier 1 curriculum with fidelity and students are learning and mastering the standards at a progressive rate. Also based on data from state testing that is aligned to Tier 1 curriculum, how can we train teachers and school leaders to use the data to meet students' needs during instruction using the Tier 1 curriculum? Number 2, what would be your framework to improve school performance scores in Assumption Parish schools as it relates to ACT Index, LEAP Assessment Index, Growth Index, early literacy and numeracy, and students with diverse needs? What specific resources would you provide to the low-performing schools to address their specific needs for improvement? And what is your detailed plan of establishing equity to address the needs of each of our schools?
Thank you, Madam President. So the first portion of the first question, first portion of that question. So we're going to take a look at how we're going to effectively ensure that Tier 1 curriculum is being used. First step, if you're not in the classroom, you will not see what's going on. We have to get into the classroom and support our teachers. And the way I design and frame my answers, what we do at the school level, and also what we do at the district level to support our school. So the school level, it's we're going to create walkthrough teams. We're going to make sure that our walkthrough teams are equipped with the skills they need. And before we get into anything to the curriculum, it is extremely important that we train our teachers and train our administrators on Tier 1 curriculum. Oftentimes, we roll out Tier 1 curriculum and we roll it out to the teachers. But who supports the teachers? The administrators. So we have to make sure that the Tier 1 curriculum instructional strategies, embedded assessments, the Tier 1 curriculum is also transferred over as far as training is concerned to our leaders in the building. So as far as walkthrough at the school level, the teams are created by the principal and an admin team. I've seen teams with teachers on it. I've seen teams with just administrators. It all depends on that particular school. What's important here is the walkthrough will provide valid information for us to make educational decisions as it relates to implementation of Tier 1 curriculum. It is extremely important we use the LDOP walkthrough documents because we want to make sure that the Tier 1 is being implemented properly. So there are walkthrough forms and documents that we can use to ensure that that is going to happen. Walkthrough teams, whenever you're going into a classroom, make sure you provide feedback to the teachers. Oftentimes, we will go in classroom and teachers are not giving feedback needed. And if I was a teacher, I would be wondering why I came in my room for number one, but also why you did not provide feedback, because I want to improve as a teacher. And it also we have to build a safe culture around walkthrough, because we do not want this to seem as threatening or punitive, because it's all about improving the implementation of Tier 1 curriculum and instruction within the school system. What occurs when we walk through? Normally walkthroughs be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes in the class. Following classroom visits, we have a team debrief. So the team would debrief. We will discuss everything that we saw as far as implementation is concerned. Also, at that time, we will come up with instructional strategies to support our team implementing. A support team will be formed, and then that support team will tier the teachers, and then we will work with teachers individually and in small groups. This is a continuous cycle. I suggest we walkthroughs at least 2 times per week, 9-week period. Also, to ensure that Tier 1 curriculum is being implemented, we have to ensure that clusters are being done. We want to make sure that clusters, which is you bring in student work as teachers, we discuss instructional strategies, and we also discuss interventions we are going to provide for the students. Clusters are extremely important. This happens on a weekly basis. Teachers are given the opportunity to bring whatever student data that they choose, or mid-mandate and say, hey, look, we want to definitely look at development. We want to look at embedded assessments. It's always better to use the resources from within the curriculum that we want to implement the Tier 1 curriculum. At the district level, we're also going to provide walkthrough at each school. Now we have district level personnel participating in the walkthrough. We have a phenomenal district staff, and most of our district staff members have been principals, have been instructional leads before. So there's another set of eyes on curriculum implementation. We will provide information based on what we see, and we also will work with our evaluators. We are just evaluating principals. We want to make sure that we provide this information not only to the school, but also the evaluators, so you can work with the principal to improve. District-wide walkthroughs normally occur once in the fall and once in the spring. Another resource, curriculum implementation model, unit studies. So at the district level, we're going to provide support through unit studies. Unit studies is basically, we're going to look at 2 parts. We're going to look at data from the benchmark assessments or curriculum embedded assessments. And we're going to look at the upcoming unit to train our teachers and have discussions with teachers about what are we doing in the next unit coming. So all of the questions as far as instructional strategy, all of the questions as far as social sequence pacing, all of the strategy, questions as it relates to instructional strategies and embedded assessment, we're going to have those conversations with our teachers. We're going to plan together the upcoming unit. So as it relates to the data analysis, the benchmark assessment that we're going to receive and review during unit studies, we're going to chart the data. We're going to look at qualitative and quantitative data. We're going to determine what standards the student mastered, what standards the student didn't master. We're going to brainstorm bite-sized action steps to improve instruction, remediate, and also extend. Because what happens if our kids master the standard, but another group of kids did not? What are we doing with small group instruction? Or what instructional strategies are we using for the kids that did not master the standard? And what instructional strategies are we using to enhance the lesson? So during that time, we want to have those discussions. Obviously, we want to set goals for proficiency, and then we want to reflect on the instructional methods from the previous unit, because we don't want to just close out without reviewing what we did in the previous unit. Unit studies, we want to unpack the standard. We want to know exactly what the standard is requiring of our students. We want to make sure whatever verbs within the standard, if it says infer something, we want to make sure that students understand how to infer before they even try. We want to make sure that whatever we're going to infer on, the kids need to know that particular objective. We want to get rid of any misconceptions as it relates to the units are concerned. We want to address prerequisite skills, any difficulties or any learning gap. We want to remove, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, barriers. We want to remove whatever barrier that our kids may face. Because if we're reviewing a unit, if I'm a teacher, I can easily say, my kids, you know what, I see this, my kids are getting part of that. So I need to make sure that I put a scaffold here, or I address this before I put this in front of the students, so our students can engage or engage in the lesson. For example, we're in South Louisiana. Some questions may come up and talk about a snowmobile. Our kids have no idea what a snowmobile is, right? But if we can relate that to something, a three-wheel or a four-wheel or something like that, we can eliminate that gap or that barrier for our kids and give them access to the curriculum. That is what we should be doing. We should not let them go out on their own and try to figure out how to ride a snowmobile if that's what the question is asked. Because sometimes we run across those questions like that. Even though it's about the skill we are addressing, sometimes the vocab get us part of it, sometimes the language. So we have to make sure that those barriers are removed. And that's just one example. Also, we want to deconstruct the standard, because sometimes our students, when we teach a standard, our students may not be ready to engage in that standard. So we need to know the standard that is below and the standard that is above. So we can merge the two and say, hey, even though you did not master this standard, let's look at some remediation standards or some remediation guides and see if we can support the learning in this particular standard. And we want to dig into the lesson. What specific skills are being taught? How you will prepare to teach students up to mastery? How will you address misconceptions, the difficulties? We want to have those conversations. And most important for me, I think sometimes we forget about the instructional strategies that are embedded within the curriculum. The curriculum is designed a certain way for a certain intention. So we need to make sure that we use these instructional strategies and embedded assessments within the curriculum so we can yield a certain result. And normally unit studies occur after every unit or right before the next unit. So we want to close out a unit, we want to work towards addressing the next unit. At the district level, we want to provide high quality professional development. This is a biggie for me. I love to talk to the creators of the curriculum. Where can we go to get the best knowledge of the curriculum than from the creators of the curriculum? So it's important that we reach out to the creators of the curriculum and form a partnership so they can come in and train our leaders and train our teachers. We do have other things. We're more than capable at the district level, but it's extremely important to reach out to the creators of the curriculum so they can come in and provide additional support. Also, our content leaders. the State Department is training content users across the state of Louisiana. They are considered the experts in that particular subject. So they have a plethora of strategies, a knowledge that they can lend to our teachers or provide to our teachers so they can support instructional delivery within the classroom. And no cost to us. They're already here, they're already on campus. And obviously, the content leader, depending on the observation, teachers could be tiered into professional development. For example, if I'm looking, if I'm a teacher and I'm struggling with instructional strategy, I can be tiered with all teachers who are struggling with instructional strategy, and instructional coach to support me with that one particular skill. If I'm a teacher that's struggling with bell ringers, and we all could be grouped together in that particular content to focus on bell ringers with all of us. It's very difficult when we blanket professional development because our teachers sometimes they already have that skill set. So why put them through the professional development that they already have mastered? I think it's extremely important that we tier our teachers when we provide professional development. Madam President, that concludes the first question. And second question. Okay. Second portion of this question, the second question has to deal with school performance. Everyone should be able to see the screen at this time. That's not downloading. Okay, I'll get started. So let's. There you go. Is up now? Okay, good. So ACT. Again, my community of systems approach will work fine here. So again, when we look at ACT, as I stated earlier, which I gave an example of, the ACT's average now is 18.3. But we also need to look at, as far as in our database, composite scores, we need to look at sub-scores, individual student scores, individual student sub-scores. What are our ACT interventions? What are the ACT intervention reports? The ACT provides specific reports for us. Student schedules and grades. We dig, we find the root cause analysis. Why are our kids struggling with ACT? Solutions. ACT online. ACT prep courses. Now this is very near to my heart. Previously, we used to have ACT prep stores, prep courses, and we put all kids in one class with one of our teachers who had no idea of ACT. Why? Failing the kids, making the teacher out of it. We need to make sure that our experts, our English teachers, teach the English portion of the ACT. We need to make sure our math, the experts, teach the math portion of the ACT. Science and reading. Reading, writing. Also, we need to look at ACT scores. We need to design a program, depending on the school, whatever they would like to do. We could design a 4-year or a 5-year program. ACT problem doesn't start for a program. It's not a high school issue when you look at ACT. Some of the skills that were at ACT required goes all the way back to 8th grade and before. So in 8th grade, we want to make sure that our kids have ACT. In 8th grade, the learning piece will be ACT Academy. The assessment piece will be ACT 8/9. ACT has a program for that. Then 9th grade, we have pre-ACT, and we want to enroll our kids in ACT Academy. For 10th grade, pre-ACT, ACT Academy. That's the learning program. The spring of 11th grade year, ACT. We want to provide our kids with ACT online now that they're older. And also let's be very strategic in how we do this. Because some of the skills, and I know parents love to, well, let my kids take an ACT in 8th grade. Totally fine with that. But understand that the skills may not be taught. Because kids need geometry, they need algebra, they need English 2, they need English 1. So that's why ACT is placed really a lot of emphasis in 11th and 12th grade, because at that point, kids should be exposed to the courses that they need. And then your 12th grade year, you would have ACT online, and you would also have ACT test. Personally, I suggest having ACT test twice in the fall, twice in the spring. Or junior and senior. Why? Because we need our students familiar with the assessment. We need to get as much data for ACT on our students as we can. This is extremely important if we're going to intervene. I was searching on Assumption High website. They're doing a phenomenal job. They actually, I think they just recently, not too long ago, had a boot camp coming up. I'm very excited to know that. ACT is emphasis on that campus. Also makes up the ACT index, worksheet. What are we doing to support our students as far as worksheets are concerned? With the same process, we want to offer worksheets curriculum, which is the learning piece for worksheets. This will also help out our businesses. Because I don't know if you're familiar with ACT worksheets, but it gives our students work-ready skills. They could take that ACT, worksheets assessment. They can bring that worksheet assessment and then give them a list of skills that the child has mastered. So it's extremely important. We need to network and bring our businesses in and make sure that they are aware of it. Hard skills as well as soft skills is extremely important in the workforce. I would love to see our kids also take customer service. Because even though we may be, our industry is sugarcane and we got some oil field industry, some businesses around, those subjects, we can never substitute enough for soft skills and customer service, because we all need customer service, especially this day and time. Some other solutions that we can come up with. We talked about the boot camp. I would like to see all of our teachers who are teaching ACT, especially our teachers, ACT certified educators. It's extremely important for our teachers to learn about ACT and how to teach ACT skills. Also, the 12th grade year for our seniors, English 4. We could embed more ACT skills in that course. We can embed those strategies so our students, they're going to college. So let's start preparing them now for what they're going to see in college. So let's embed some of those instructional strategies, embed some of those skills that the kids will need. And obviously, I want to see high school print out everywhere. I would have ACT in a week, ACT student of the week, ACT teacher of the week. I would have it class all in the community. Any type of meeting that we have, making sure that we have competition, making sure that we're cultivating our students at all comes from whenever they achieve any goal. And finally, we're gonna implement our plan, we're gonna develop our plan, and then we also have a system. All right, we lead 2025 is South. This is the assessment index is one of to. It's also the most important when it comes to moving as far as progress, most important as far as skill as it relates to our standards. Currently, right now, when you look at our LEAP 2025, where's the assessment district, we have 61. Some of our local performance schools, another name, we're at 53.8, 37.9. We have 59.9, 47, 45.7, 48.1. That is the assessment index that is connected directly to the LEAP 2025. So we have some work, and I will talk about some things that we can do. But again, this is a team. We need parents on board. We need community members on board. We need board members. We need teachers, superintendent, everybody pushing it, pushing the LEAP 2025 because it's extremely important. Once we get this, all of our so day-to-day, we need, and you guys have already addressed this. When you look at your plan as far as the district is concerned, we all in. It's there. You've already put some things in place, and I support that. Yeah, there are things we probably could do a little bit better and that, but also there's some things that you guys are doing great. So we definitely need to make sure that we continue to push in that direction. Day-to-day, if I'm addressing the 2025 assessment index at school, I want to know everything about this school. I want parent surveys. I want to know how my parents feel about this school. I want students. I want culture has to be a part of it. I want student surveys. I want teacher surveys. I want leadership surveys. We need to look at, not only that, we need to look at teaching evaluation. Because if your BAM score says that you're in a 9 percentile, but then your evaluation that you receive in a 99 percentile, you're highly effective, it doesn't match. We need to make sure that we be consistent on what we're doing as it relates to evaluating teachers and providing support to teachers. Because in one sense, if I look at the observation score, and if the observation score is extremely high, I'm going to say that teacher doesn't need any support. But then if I look at the BAM score, it paints a different picture. And also, where are our teachers that are highly effective? If we're talking about moving the LEAP 2025 in, our highly effective teachers, they need to be at the table because they're doing something right that we need to know about. And we need to allow them the opportunity to talk to us about it. Provide professional development if they have time to do some shadow instructional strategy. How you motivate kids, how you get them involved. We need to know those things. And we do have high performing teachers in the district. So it's extremely important to tap into that. I want to know how the community feels about this. You want to know test scores. You want to know individual interventions. What are you doing as a school to improve the instructional practices on your campus? We want to look at our IEPs and our IAPs. What instructional resources are we providing to our students who have barriers? We need to remove those barriers. How many kids we have on campus that are identified? What are we doing for those children? And all of that data, especially when you're looking at improving low performance schools, especially when you're looking at improving indexes, we may come up with several different things we have to avoid. So the root cause analysis, not about identifying one problem. It depends on the data that we see to determine how many problems. Guess what? I shouldn't even problem. Sometimes we're going to high five and celebrate because we're doing some phenomenal work in schools. I think that is extremely important to tell the world, tell everybody. Hey, this school is doing a phenomenal job with ECCT. This school is doing a phenomenal job with 2025. So we need to celebrate that as well. And we need to develop sustainable solutions. And I use sustainable because even for the long run, you don't want to drive by not overnight fix because it never works. It's not long term. To teach a child how to read, you can't fix that just in 12th grade. We have to start with our babies, our early childhood center. child care center. We have to go way back and start making sure that our kids, our teachers are certified, and we have instructional strategies that are. How we're gonna monitor? The State Department has provided us the opportunity to use D3660, which is interim and diagnostic assessments. We want to monitor this. Depending on the subject, it can be 4 times a year, 3 times a year. So we want to make sure that we monitor those and make sure that we provide students that particular research. And also, with other instructional strategies. In addition to that, we want to monitor the embedded assessments within the curriculum. That's not taken too far away from the curriculum. Because if this is tier 1 curriculum, it's proven to work, then we need to make sure that we spend as much time as we can working and focusing on the curriculum. Working with the curriculum, focusing on the curriculum. Growth index. I would say that if you look at your growth index, you're doing fairly well. You know, when we look at how the schools are actually moving kids. From what I gather right now, we have 87.8 district wide. We have some areas we can improve. We got a school that's a 6.4. We have another school that's a 74.6. It's not bad, but there's room for improvement, especially when you look at some of our other schools like schools in that area. The State Department provides us growth and mastery targets. We need to look at those targets, share those targets. So the targets are set based on where you should be as far as math is concerned by 8th grade, high school by 10th grade, and you get to your English 1, English 2, and your geometry 2, ELA. However many teachers grow to mastery, that is divided up. How many years you have to get to that particular point. So in other words, if I receive a target and I'm in 7th grade, and the target is 10 points, that means I need to go 10 points in 7th grade, 10 points in 8th grade. That means that 5 points in 7th grade, 5 points in 8th grade. So my target in 7th grade would be 5 points. If I meet it, I need 5 points. Target in 8th grade, 5 points. At that point, I should have mastery real high. Even if we do not meet the growth target, we have question number 2, that our kids can still earn growth points, as long as they are performing better than their peers across the state of Louisiana. So even if we look at growth targets, we continue to move and press forward and move our schools. Even if we don't meet the target, we can outperform other students across the state of Louisiana. So it's extremely important for our students and our teachers to know that. I will have parent meetings. Bring the parents in, inform them of the data points, inform them of the growth and mastery. Look at prior research scores. Look at the LEAD 360 diagnostic. Any type of review data. You know, we could set targets each year, and we could say, okay, if you're 1 or 2 points away from meeting your target, that's going to be the target. We have individual journals. We could have this posted in each individual class. Again, teacher van data, teacher observation data, intervention data, school improvement plan. Let's take a look and see what we're doing to improve the schools. As far as from an administrative standpoint, are we addressing the growth index as it relates to the growth index, the master result? Are we doing it? Then we drill down and look all down and look at the possible reasons why or which target is the way it is, where it's at. Some possible causes may be due to the unfinished learning. You know, some possible causes may be teacher effect, any effect. Maybe the curriculum. These are all possible reasons why our kids are not meeting the growth target. And then we look for a sustainable solution. District level support, production development, highly effective teachers. Where are they? Are they performing? Are they our most average population? Practice. Performing our kids, having perform our students. Create data charts. Also incentivize. Let's incentivize. Let's come our parents and our kids. Let's celebrate if they're doing well. Let's look at our teachers. They need incentives as well. devise a system for progress monitoring. Tracking students along the way. I always used to say, let's not wait till the end because it's already in. Let's do this along the way. Let's track our students. Let's not try to figure out triage. Let's make sure that we are done. Literacy, we want to make sure that we look at our early childhood. We want to make sure we look at our class observations and our TS goals. We want to form interventions around them. In our local performance schools, just the same as we did before, we want to make sure that we do a day-to-day. We want to make sure that we provide resources based on our day-to-day. We want to do root cause analysis. Equity. That's the last slide. We saved it all. Every intervention doesn't work for every child. This picture right here says it all. We've given where it says equality. We've given everybody the same resources, right? Look what happens. The child in the wheelchair still can't see the thing. The young lady still, she's short. But when you look at equity, we make sure that everyone has. So the kid in the wheelchair, we need to build a ramp. Different intervention to remove a different barrier. The young lady, she needed 2 students versus 1. So we have to make sure that whatever we provide for our students is based on the individual needs and the barriers that there are. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. I think a few of the board members may have some follow-up questions. We'll start with Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, Mr. Bartholomew, thank you. Welcome to Assembly Parish. As a young man growing up, I can recall several things or situations that happened in my life that truly identified or defined my character and integrity as an individual I aspired to be growing up. My question, have you ever had an incident or situation or anything in particular that you can identify as a defining moment in your life? And if so, can you share with the board? When I was a friend, I was charged with bringing 3 communities together. I was charged with bringing 4 schools together. It was extremely important that we succeed because this is something nobody wants. Because we had 3 individual schools, 4 individual schools and 3 communities, all rival before. So it was very, very rough. And my wife, one day, over the years, we turned around in detail. And something as simple as this. One day during our assembly, the students came together. Now, I literally, I went home and I teared up because all of them that we give in the community to bring everybody together. I mean, literally, people hating each other. All of the push that we put in place to make it all about you and define what unites us instead of what divides. In that general assembly, I saw kids from different social and economic backgrounds, of 1-parent homes, 2-parent homes, no parents in the home. I saw kids from this part of the community, different part of the community, all joined, put their arms around each other, and sung the school song. And that is wonders for the culture, that is wonders as far as an example to the community, that we're ready to do. And I went home to my wife and I said, we finally over. And from that day on, the school went from deep to a kids from all different places, kids from all different backgrounds, kids from all different areas came together for one cause. And that was South African High School. And that was something that I will always treasure. It was something I would always hang my hat on. It would be something always I would give back to the kids because they did it. And when I became principal, I gave them the tool. I gave them the phone. And I told the superintendent, I said, this is for them. This is for my teachers. This is for my kids. I said, because without them believing in the vision, without my faculty working hard, extra days after school tutoring, faculty members coming to work early to tutor kids. I mean, I even allowed kids to have prayer house. You know, it wasn't in the school, it was voluntary. You wanted to go to the parents used to stop by the school to go outside. Bus driver after they would go stop over. And it was all voluntary. The kids wanted to do it. But that was the defining moment when I looked around that room and I saw all those kids come together and sing that song that we created. That was one of my most defining moments as a leader. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Marr?
Yes, Mr. Downey. What would you do to help a student that may not be college material, that may want to go into an industry? We have so many industries around here, like you mentioned, even sugarcane and/or refineries or chemical plants. How do we help those students?
I think it's extremely important that we partner, first of all, with our businesses. In addition to our businesses, we need to partner our organizations to make sure that our kids have the resources and the training that they need. So it's a community college, community college. We need to make sure that we provide those work-ready skills on campus and make sure that we bridge the gap between school and work. It's also extremely important to, what I did, I made sure that all of my teachers had an opportunity to impact students. And as far as the work concerned, my PE teacher, he actually went certified to teach them all. My band teacher he got certified to teach. My arts teacher got certified to teach other skills. So we offer those industry-based certifications on site. But the partnership, that is what's going to drive that relationship. We have to get out into the community, into the businesses, bring them to the table. And we have to say, what do you need from us as a school system to provide good quality work as we need? Because currently, right now, our census, we are scheduled to lose 6.5%. Right now, I mean, our population. That's what the numbers are. If we could train our kids in our schools, those kids will get jobs in our community. We will live in our community. Our community will be better. Because we have to address we don't want our kids to we want our kids to stay in our community. And the only way to do that, if you're not college material, if you do not want to go to a foreign university, we want to make sure that we provide you an opportunity straight out of high school into the workforce. And the only way we can do that, we have to network and bring everybody to the table and teach the children the skills they need in order to be successful. Businesses will let us know we need this type of work. We need they need these skills. That's why I mentioned earlier about customer service. You know, that'll go a long way. You know, the first impression says a lot about us. We have to make sure that kids present themselves in a positive manner. Now, with that, I will work with our industry. I will make sure that we provide those resources. Thank you.
Ms. Mickens?
I have a question, but I thought we were going by with the slides that you presented. That's what I asked the other lady on her I asked the other lady to tell me how did our school how was it effective using a certain tool that she brought here. So I didn't have a question for you, but after sitting and thinking, I've always asked superintendents, my problem is, how do we get these highly effective teachers from high performing schools to move to our lower performing schools without making them move to that school, and with money not being and says. Would you make that work?
Well, that is a great question. And without some type of financial incentive, it can be very good. I'm gonna be honest with you. You know, but we can speak to the whole about, because every teacher loves kids, and this has to be we all in, right? And we should have honest conversations with our administrators, because you don't want to ever push someone into a situation that they don't want to be.
Right.
I would never do that, because that person is not going to be happy, and the students are not going to be happy. But I'm going to twist this around a little. I'm going to say, let's build the faculty.
Okay.
Let's take time to invest in the people that are in our buildings now. So all of the strategies that I said earlier, content leaders, strategies from the Department of Education, support from the Department of Education, support from our own staff. Because if we could build highly effective teachers in our low performance schools and keep our highly effective teachers everywhere else, just think about the impact we'll have across the district. Because now we have highly effective teachers everywhere versus moving highly effective teachers from one school to another. And that's not off the table. But I think the right answer to the question is we want to build every teacher to be highly effective. And I think that's extreme. And every leader is highly effective. I'm a coach at heart. I believe in supporting our teachers. I believe in supporting our principals. I believe in supporting and making sure that we provide all of the resources possible can for them to be successful, because I am passionate about my work. I don't know if you can hear my voice, and I'm passionate about this work. And this is what I live for. This is what I do every day. This is what I've been bred to do. This is what I've been trained to do. And I've given education my all. God has helped me. So I would definitely try my best to do that. We will definitely first look at the building capacity within the building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question.
Mr. Robinson?
All I have, you answered the question about the turnaround schools. The only thing I have is that the schools that you turn around, middle school, junior high school, and how long did it take you to get it settled?
So my school was a combination. I had 7 through 12 grades.
Okay.
So I had an elementary component, middle school component, because they follow the same one in the index, but they follow the same elementary, and then I have my high school as far as the components of turnaround time-wise. So when I became a principal, we had more fights than we had here. Right? So before we could establish any type of academic goals, we had to make sure that we put processes and address them, right? So that took some time. But over the course, and then what happened I was flirting with a B for quite some time. So when I got to a strong B, and I was getting ready to become an A, the State Department changed it. So and that happened, and I was principal at that school for about 9-10 years there. So within about a 3 to 5 year period, we were on track. And then from that point, we just constantly increasing the foundation was there. We were able to address that 3 to 5 years. But again, I never got my A because the target kept moving every time I got close. So, but finally, we got our A and we backed it up with a high performance score right after that the next year. So it wasn't overnight. This was something that we could sustain because we have the pieces.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Washington?
Mrs. Bartholomew, you kind of answered some of this question. You used some words that I wanted to hear, I wanted to see. But you alluded to the fact that we have good administrators, we got good teachers, but they are awaiting a good leader, a strong leader. What are some effective leadership characteristics you possess that will help you grow and become an effective leader of the Assumption Parish schools that would move our district forward?
All right. Steal my thunder. Bring that in and close it. To be an effective leader, I think one thing we have to understand, and I'm going to speak to this more in my closing, but we have to understand that we are custodians of people. You know, we're responsible. We're responsible for individuals. We're responsible for children. And I think relationship piece relationship often get lost in the numbers. Because you want to always PS1, PSPF, and you're a stickler for just the numbers. But the numbers will come once you get relationships. So some of the characteristics: integrity. Mean what you say what you do. I have to make sure that my teachers knew that if I promised something, if I said we were going to do something, I had to do it. Courage. Courage to make a decision.
Yes, sir.
Courage to do what's right. And stand by it. And I'm the type of person to make decisions that are best for the children. That's what we're in the business for. And that's what we should be doing. And I've been doing it very successfully because I've been keeping that as the forefront. God has. I think you have to be transparent. You know, when we talk about skills that we need, you know, people need to know that, hey, that's why I started out with transparency. I want the teachers to be able to have access to it. I want the teachers to be able to have access to it. I want to be as transparent as possible. I think you have to be an innovator. I think you have to be creative. I think you have to be strategic. All of those things you need in order to be an effective leader. But you better have, you know, in my opinion, leading kids, leading people, you have to make sure that everybody is treated fairly and you take care of people. I think that's extremely important. Sorry, Mr. Washington, I don't know, I appreciate the question. I hope I answered it, but I do have that coming up.
No, thank you, Bernie. I think that's good.
Mr. Bag?
Thank you, Mr. Todman. In your presentation, quite often you said, we need to know the why. We have to know the why. And as you know, our country, our state, our district, we're all dealing with the virus. We don't know what's going to happen with funding from the state, the MFP, federal funding, and the debt of our nation. We also don't know how our taxes are going to be affected locally. We've had some decline in enrollment in some areas. We have limited resources. A couple of years ago, we had to RIF. And in your presentation, we've had people say, well, we have a few problems. Our state and country has a few problems. But it interests me, why did you apply? Why did you pick Assumption Parish to advance your career? You have alluded to what you bring, and I'm sure there'll be some comments at the end, but what attracted you, knowing what you know? And I'll have a comment at the end.
That's good, Mr. Bag. Use my why. Great point. And you're right. You are in some trying times. COVID has really put a damper on our advancement as a country, as a state, even if all the way down to local government, even in the family. Assumption Parish, I saw it as a piece that I could connect. I'm from small town. I understand that someone's dad might be working in the school the child goes to. I understand that the local judge might be the local family, right? So for me, this is almost resembles home. And also, I see potential. I see so much potential here. Even though we surrounded by a lot of happening, I think if we can move the ship in the right direction, we can have businesses come here, provide opportunities for our children. I think we could train students to stay home versus going to neighboring parishes to live and work. We want them to stay here. And you know as well as I do, if you want to attract business, if you want to attract homeowners, produce a good school district. And for those reasons, I say Assumption Parish is very attractive for me. And I'm intrigued, honestly. I'm intrigued by the way that parish is designed. You know, those neighboring parishes, you don't hear much. You know, you hear about whose parishes relates to some things. I'm talking to superintendents and people around, and you hear about the pension parishes and things like that. So it's very intriguing, and I want to know more about the people here. I want to know more about the history here. I want to know more about what we have to offer to the world and to we have our families. So it's very attractive, and I don't know, it would be an advancement as far as my career is concerned, but I'm really doing what's right for children. I think children, I can give something to them. I can give something to the teachers and to that industry. So for me, yes, it is advancement, but also my purpose. It's the work that I've been called to.
Thank you very much, but I just want to give you a little comment that supports your answer. Over the years, you will soon find out just how great our employees are. And over the years, we have become noted as the parish who does a lot with a little. And so we're looking for good leadership and for the best to come and despite the challenges. So thank you for your answer.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Orso.
Mr. Bartholomew, we are a rural parish with limited activities for our students. I am grateful for our successful athletic programs to be able to offer something for our students to be involved in, and in many cases makes them better students. What other programs besides sports can you envision introducing to our high school students who aren't sports-minded to get them involved?
Thank you. Good question. I believe in all. A lot of times people don't realize we have students who are not interested in traditional activities, traditional sports, but art, great people. So when I say arts, I'm talking about theater, I'm talking about home, I'm talking about speech, as well as being an artist. So, but our kids need access. In addition, I want to ensure that our students compete at the national level between I founded the National Honor Society at South Latin University. I couldn't find anyone to do it. I had some high performing kids. My students said, Mr. Bartholomew, we want an organization for ourselves. I said, well, sit down in my office, all get around and come with your proposal. I said, put a proposal together. So one thing that I did, I chose the National First Ever National Honor Society. And what we need to do, we need to give our kids experience. It took them 2 years in a row to watch TV. So they can compete with other kids in the National Honor Society. We should have our students competing as for national data. We should make sure that we provide data within our schools, making sure those kids have opportunities there as well. Debate clubs, speech clubs. We need our kids presenting themselves to the world. We want to celebrate them. We want to provide those opportunities. Those are a few things that I can think that we can provide that non-athletic. Student government. How long is our student government? our gaming is real big right now. Are we providing our kids opportunities that they can actually earn a career? I don't know if I'm good at, playing a lot of games, but gaming is actually a career now. How are we going to access, how are we going to give our kids access to that world that they truly love? So I think it's the perfect scenario where we survey the students to find out their interest and make sure that we build programs around them. Thank you.
Mr. O'Donnell.
We have one high school in the valley. Right now, we lose a lot of students when they get out of 8th grade, they don't come to 9. What can we see in the future to enhance kids to come to our high school? What do you know about having extra college credits to be put into the
So, and I just want to be clear on the question. So it's extra college credit for the high school. Yeah. So this is great. Just to answer the second part of that question first, if you don't mind. It's okay. So extra credit to we need to offer more courses. We need to offer this is advanced placement courses, giving our kids opportunity to earn top credit while they're in high school. We need to offer more prep courses. Kids can actually earn if we do it right. Kids can almost earn what they can earn an associate degree before they leave high school. If we do it right, that's something that we may need to explore because we got some kids the associate degree they can go directly into the workforce with those certifications. So that's something that we can offer. And our dual enrollment. We need to work our counselors, our school leaders, and our districts. We need to work with our local universities and whatever new courses there are. We want to try to make sure that our kids have access to it. I believe that if our teachers can become adjunct professors, that would be great. Because now we have a professor on campus, dual enrollment, teaching one course and the kids are getting dual credit. So it's good to if we can work with the local universities. That's for instance our English 4, our English 3 teachers. If we could partner with local universities and allow them to be adjunct professors, we can actually have those professors on site versus our kids leaving school and going high school. So those are some things that I would do, encourage our students to do, and work with the admin team and district level folks to make sure that we increase college opportunities for the students. The first part of the question comes to the high school. How are we going to get our kids, even in middle school, going to high school? I think just like any other schools, our high schools need to get into the middle school. We need to make sure that we plan activities together. We need to sell our high schools, middle school parents. We need to get into the community. We need to let them know we need to show because I think they have a fairly good high school. And I think everyone needs to know that. And also, we need to offer opportunities to bridge that gap. For example, offer some high school credit in middle school. Let the parents get a piece of what it is to for your child to high school. Bring them aboard and allow them to participate in that balance. Allow them to participate in different things that we can offer that would want to. So those are some things that I would do to increase the enrollment on the high school side so we don't lose our middle school kids. And let's face it, we need to talk to them. Let's survey the parents. Let's figure out why they're leaving. And let's try to develop solutions, programs to address that. And ensure to our parents, hey, whatever your fear is, whatever issue you may have, we want to make sure that we remove those barriers. Your child have access to our funds. So those are two things. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. You have 10 minutes to close.
Thank you, Madam President. In closing, I'm going to talk about my educational journey one more time. Talk about leadership. And not just leadership in the way that we're accustomed to as it relates to strong leadership and X's and O's, figuring things out. Leadership about moving. How do we connect it? And then togetherness. My educational journey. I understand the life of a teacher. I was a teacher, supervised teacher. I was a coach. I understand what coach has to go through on Friday night. Get up Saturday morning, do it all over again. Coaches meeting on Sunday, then have to wake up the next day on Monday to go to class. Same thing follow me, coaches. Drive my own hours, and then have to get back and make sure that they're up and the kids are up and ready to go to school the next day. I've been a school bus driver. I've taken those long trips, and I've, transported the football team, I've transported kids to colleges, to different events and activities. I remember when the trip check came in for us. I was bus driver. I know, so I understand their world. A disciplinarian. One of the jobs in the district that's deal with a lot of negativity all the time. Because bad kids. That's the things that we can do with our MTSS program. That's something that we can implement. If it's not implemented already, multiple tier system of support. Always supporting our kids academically and been a principal long time. Established, well established. Understand the life. Right now, what principals are dealing with. Opening schools, our faculty, how we keep our faculty on campus, how we keep them coming to work every day, how will I keep kids safe, how will I keep my administration safe, and under the umbrella of school academic. So a lot of I understand that way. I've been through a rift. I've been through Hurricane Katrina working with FEMA, making sure that our schools are up and running. I did that way. I had to reduce force when all prices dropped and we didn't have enough money to pay volunteers for all of our good people in my building. I've done it at the district level. Some of the most important work I'm experiencing right now. I supervise 6 schools. Right now, my principals, we're texting back and forth right now as we speak when on my way here. Talking. Trying to figure this out. I supervise 6 principals, 1 district athletic director. Long conversation with Coach Paul. So that's why long conversation. What are we going to do? Because the governor just extended the phase for 3 more weeks. The Louisiana Athletic Association is saying something different. We're going to start football. So we're having all of those conversations. I'm involved with instructional coaches. I have 2 instructional coaches that I supervise. And as a district leader, not only that I supervise all the personnel, but I just finished with the Strong Start Summer initiative that we had. I supervise that program. A lot of school districts across the state didn't have it. So we went ahead from July 7th to July 23rd. We were able to offer school for kids to address unfunded learning from March to May. I supervise that program. The one thing I really love and appreciate, I had a debriefing session with my teachers at the end of every week. So I got the good and the bad. So we're able to move forward with some feedback from the teachers to remove those barriers so they can engage in the work that they want to do. And as well as from the students. Additional experiences. And this is what I'm going to talk about. Attributes. Dedication. Integrity, courage, perseverance. We need to see this through. We need to get through COVID-19. We need to have perseverance to do that. Love. I'm very humble. I'm very, very humble for this opportunity. And I'm approachable. You can talk to me. You can come to me. Nothing is off the table. We're going to always have conversations about how we can improve schools. Leadership is about the people impact. We could say, oh, it's about who you know, it's about what you know. But people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is a true fact. And I'm going to share a couple stories with our kids. Corey was a student. Both parents dropped out of high school. Dropped out of high school. I took Corey and I said, you know what? I'm going to see it through. Dad died at a pivotal time in his life. Kept encouraging. Some people say call it ministry. Some people call it ministry. I kept encouraging. I didn't want to lose him. Corey went on to go to LSU. Worked for the great Nick Saban as an equipment manager. Corey is not equipment manager for the New Orleans. Timothy, did not even walk across the stage for graduation. Did something in high school, did not even get a high school diploma like everybody else. It was mailed to me. Very poor, very poor, poor family. Timothy went to Southeast, went on to LSU dental school. He's a dentist. My last child we talked about is Michael. Michael had both parents in the home, well-educated parents, good parents. Michael wasn't like everybody. He was one of those diverse sons, one of those kids that really had Darren, and he had to. He sent me a text a couple weeks ago. He said, "Oh, Mr. B, how you doing?" I said, "I'm good, man. How you doing? How's the family?" He sent me a picture of him and his daughter. He said to me, "I just want to share this moment. This is my first child. I said, great the life of my life." He said, "Yes, everything changes." So leadership it's not just about us. It's about the people who can prepare. Long time ago, I said, parents are, sometimes at first we get a lot. And one of my administrators came to me and said, "Donna, why are you going? Why are you listening to all of that? Why you let her talk to you?" And I turned and I looked dead in the eye and I said, if I could save one child, and that one child saved me, I just saved you. If those two children saved you, I just saved four. So that is where that is where I'm at as a leader. And that is my work. And I will continue to do that work as long as I can. And in closing, together. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together, positive. Working together is success. I'm extending my right hand to you, not only to ask your support to be the next superintendent, but rather sign up together. Thank you for your time. Madam President, please.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew.
Thank you.
Madam President, I make a motion to go into executive session.
I have a motion on the floor to go and move into executive session
Second.
with the candidate.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lewis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
It's about 9:30.
was the timeline, I think tomorrow, last thing on the agenda, right?
I hadn't looked at it yet, but, if that's it, I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Last time on the agenda,
Sir.
you know, there may be people here on that issue, it might be worthwhile. Having that decision made.
Can we adjust the agenda?
On the order of the agenda.
Yeah, you can change it.
As long as you don't change it.
I don't know what else is on your agenda, but
You got to change both, I think I'll give it 1 or 2 things.
Why would you suggest putting it,
People.
first?
Because there will be people, a lot of people here, and maybe they don't want to wait till the end.
Okay, so after they hear it, they can move it.
just saying, there may be ordinarily, you go to select a superintendent, you have a larger than usual crowd. And instead of making them sit through the whole meeting, it's exciting as the meeting hard.
We just wasn't, I mean, we wasn't sure if that would be, if that would be the need for executive session again, but apparently there's not, so I don't see any reservations for moving the order if you all would like for us to do that.
That's good.
Okay, we'll handle that tonight.
All right. I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Washington, second by Mr. Robinson. All in favor?
Good meeting.
I'm serious.
All right.